24 coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little black subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that black subscribe button. Really does help our audience grow, really does help our channel grow, really does help and mean more than you could possibly know. So go ahead, hit that little black subscribe button. Also, thank you to our presenting sponsor, Betfred Sportsbook and the Betfred Sportsbook app. Bet 50 on any game, get 250 in free bets. Thank you again to Betfred. Thank you again to you. Now, here is the video that you came here for. Speaking of things that might be coming a little bit quicker than we think, I now want to switch gears to the Big 12. Because while obviously the SEC meetings are taking center stage, and I get it, right? The SEC is home to the big brands, Alabama, Georgia, LSU, the iconic head coaches, Kirby Smart, probably getting there. I don't know if he's an icon yet, but you get the point. Nick Saban, Brian Kelly, maybe one day will be a national championship winning coach. But while the SEC has the big brands and the big names and the highest paid coaches, I would argue what's going to happen, or what is going to at least be discussed at the Big 12's league meetings this week, is actually going to be more interesting. Why is that? It is because you have a conference that we know they want to expand. Okay, so for people, I think everybody knows, but the Big 12 this year will actually have 14 teams because Texas and Oklahoma are in the league, but they will soon leave, all while Cincinnati, Houston, BYU, and Central Florida are coming in. But what's wild is the Big 12, with their new commissioner, Brett Yormark, has made no secret about it. He wants to expand. He wants to expand quickly, and he wants to expand fearlessly. So he has a conference that reigns from coast to coast. So we know the Big 12 wants to expand. They're not hiding it. But what I think is more interesting that not enough people are probably talking about, they're courting schools that are very much kind of on a tight time clock here, okay? I don't think people, like we overblow so much in the media in 2023, 2024, this time of year, this time of life. Yet somehow the Big 12 pursuing all these schools as their deadlines approach is somehow being underreported. Because if they plan on poaching schools from the Pac-12, the Pac-12 TV deal expires a year from now. The Pac-12 is trying to put together a TV deal. They got to make moves, the Big 12, on these Pac-12 schools soon before a deal comes into place. We've talked previously about UConn. UConn is in the Big East. The Big East is renegotiating its TV deal right now, and their current TV deal expires after the 2024-2025 school year. And also San Diego State, which we've talked about as well. At least some cursory interest from the Big 12. Well, how about this? San Diego State has to make a decision on its future, whether it's the Pac-12, the Big 12, or staying in the Mountain West, before June 30th. This month, June 30th. Because if not, they have a $30 million payment that would be owed to the Mountain West. So we know the Big 12 wants to expand. We know things have to happen quickly. And this week, I don't know if it's all going to come out this week, but I think it's going, things are moving behind the scenes. I expect things to happen very quickly, and I expect some decisions to be made in the next couple weeks. And I think we might be looking at a different future to college sports in the Big 12 and across college sports with the shakeup that could happen. But I'll also say this, from what I'm hearing, I spent the last couple days working the phones, talking to anybody who would talk to me, listening to other people. I think the realignment might happen a little bit different than I expected. Here's what we know right now, or at least we think we know. I think Colorado is headed to the Big 12, okay? So Dennis Dodd of CBS reported this week that the two sides have had substantive talks, including in-person talks. This came on the heels of Barry Trammell, a reporter out of Oklahoma. Remember, Oklahoma State is in the Big 12. He, a few days ago, put out a report that basically said that he believes that Colorado is, quote, ready to commit to joining the Big 12 soon. So Colorado, all signs are pointing towards Colorado going to the Big 12. And what I could tell you and what I have heard independently is that there are two big reasons that Colorado is pushing so aggressively towards the Big 12. And both of them come from one man, and his name is Deion Sanders. Okay. So we all know that Coach Prime is now at Colorado. And my understanding is that this is something that not only Deion endorses, Deion is actively pushing, and all you got to do is kind of follow the tea leaves here. Where Deion's from Florida, but he spent most of his adult life in the Dallas area, in Texas, still has a home in Texas, which he spends time at when he's not, either at Jackson State in previous years or at Colorado. So he still has ties to Texas. He wants to recruit Texas. He knows all the high school coaches. And so he is actively pushing for Colorado to the Big 12. And I think Colorado is kind of, believe it or not, at the behest of Deion Sanders. It sounds crazy. He just got there. He hasn't coached a game yet. But my understanding talking to people is they kind of get like, if Deion doesn't work, we're kind of out of options. Like we need Deion to work either to build us into a football power or to elevate this program so that if he leaves for another job, it's a good job for somebody else to take. Well, how do you elevate a football program? It starts with simple dollars and cents, something that Colorado doesn't have a lot of right now. So to pay Deion, to pay his assistant coaches, to maybe, and I know schools in most cases can't really be involved with NIL, to get NIL where it needs to be, you need more money. You need more big games. You need more marquee matchups. And so Deion is pushing it, and the schools, I believe, support it. What's interesting, though, and if you pay attention to anything, listen to this, because I'm going to give you some information I don't know that you'll get anywhere else. I think the sands are starting to turn in terms of who might join Colorado in the Big 12, okay? I don't think anything's official yet, but for weeks and months and maybe even a year or so at this point, I think the tea leaves have indicated that if anybody leaves for the Big 12 from the Pac-12, it would be those four corner schools. It would be Colorado, which we just discussed, Utah, Arizona, and Arizona State. Well, over the last couple of days, I have kind of gotten the indication that that might not be as concrete as a lot of people think. On the one hand, I was under the impression that Arizona and Arizona State were working in conjunction. They were working together, and everything that one school did, the other school was going to do with it. Kind of like how when the Big 12 a million years ago in the 2010, 2011 range, if you remember at that time, Oklahoma and Oklahoma State were tied together at the hip, and some of the Texas schools were tied together at the hip. I bring it up because in recent days, I have heard and I have learned that Arizona and Arizona State might not be as tied together as people think. Arizona State, really, as weird as it sounds, I don't know that they prioritize athletics. Their school president is not a sports guy at all. Remember, he's the guy that signed off on Herm Edwards, kept Herm Edwards around forever, whatever. And the AD, not good at his job. Just going to say it. Not good at his job. Look at his history, whatever. So with that said, I don't know that Arizona is really in the crosshairs of the Big 12. And I'll take it a step further. I've actually heard varying things on Utah, that Utah might not be interested in the Big 12 because who is in the Big 12 right now? Their cross-state rivals, BYU. Now, I think you'd be crazy to stick around in the Pac-12, but I get the sense that Utah isn't too keen on going to a conference where their biggest rival is. Remember, these two sides did not get along when they were both in the Mountain West. They play a rivalry called the Holy War. And I know there are some religious connotations to that, but I get the sense that those two schools are not excited to be in the same league, and Utah, with the perception that they would be, quote unquote, following BYU to the Big 12. Not saying that's how I would perceive it, but I think that's how some people in Utah do. And so my understanding is those four corner schools are no longer a priority for the Big 12, and that the Big 12 has essentially shifted its interests. And it shifted its interest to schools that we have talked about on this show a lot. UConn, Gonzaga, and San Diego State. I'm not saying all of them. I still think Arizona, by the way, from the Pac-12 would be in the mix. So a Colorado and Arizona, and then maybe a UConn and either a Gonzaga or San Diego State. That is my understanding of where the Big 12 wants to go. And let me explain why. One, it doesn't solve, but it solidifies something that Brett Yormark has talked about quite a bit, which he wants a coast-to-coast, corner-to-corner conference, right? I mean, this is what the Big Ten did from LA to Piscataway, New Jersey. And Brett Yormark has been very public about, we want to be in all four time zones because that is what's best for our TV partners. We can play noon Eastern kickoffs in football. And then we could play the 10:30 kickoffs kickoffs in football at BYU. But then in basketball, we can also provide inventory if Gonzaga or San Diego State is in the mix. Beyond that, Big 12 officials have been very public about, we think that basketball is undervalued. And I know it sounds crazy, right? I know a lot of you are going to sit there and say, like, Torres, it's all about TV, is all about football, this, that, the other thing. Well, a couple things stand out to me. One, and we talked about this previously with Gonzaga. Remember, the Big 12 TV deal is unique. ESPN has exclusive rights to the SEC. The Big 10 is Fox, CBS, and NBC, okay? The Big 12 going forward is going to be with both ESPN and Fox. So I bring it up because you can sit here and say basketball doesn't matter. Well, guess who needs late night inventory? ESPN and Fox. So that would make the TV partners happy. And here's the other thing, and this is my understanding of the thinking within the Big 12, is yes, football is a priority and it's always going to be number one and nothing's going to come second. But we believe in a 12-team playoff era, we're going to have teams good enough. With TCU making the national championship games last year, Kansas State, Baylor, we have a competitive football product. But now, if we can put together the best basketball conference in America, football's always going to be king. But whatever the future of college sports looks like, if we have the best basketball conference, if we have, say, Gonzaga and UConn and Arizona, and I'm not saying any of them are 100%, but if we have those three schools or sub in San Diego State for Gonzaga or whatever, then whatever the future of college sports looks like, we're going to have to be included. Because if in 10 years or 5 years, the ACC breaks up and the Big 10 grabs a few schools and the SEC grabs a few schools and both are at 20 and they're trying to break off and do their own thing, well, you can't host a legitimate national championship in basketball if Kansas isn't involved, which we know is in the Big 12. And if UConn and Gonzaga and Arizona. So if we build the best basketball conference that's ever existed from coast to coast, corner to corner, we can't be squeezed out of whatever the future of college sports is. And so my understanding is right now that's the thinking. And listen, I'm not here to say that anything is 100% set in stone. And if those four corner schools committed today, I don't know what that means. But my understanding is the tides have started to shift. There is interest in schools. Let me put it this way. I think there are some schools that maybe the league is more interested in than are out there publicly. San Diego State, UConn, Gonzaga probably as well. And I think there are some schools that maybe they're not as interested in. Arizona State, Utah, etc. Keep that in your back pocket because I'm here to tell you, no one else is giving you that information. And in 2 or 3 weeks, if I look smart,